Welcome back, everybody, to the What Worked For Me podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest. We have Gene today, who's lost over 200 pounds, about 225 pounds, got up to 550 pounds at his largest. Gene, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're joining us from Texas. Is there anything else you'd like
Yeah,
to introduce yourself with today?
yeah, man, just chilling in Texas, or not
Awesome.
chilling, sweating in Texas.
Yeah, I'm sure Texas in summertime is a can be
It's a
pretty
beating.
brutal. But so, Gene, I know you got all the way up to 550 pounds, you said, but no
Yep.
one starts out that big. Did you grow up big? Did you gain weight later in life? How did
Um,
this kind of progress?
yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I was skinny up until around 5 or 6 years old, like really skinny, and then just some family stuff happened, and I kind of started getting, to where I turned inward and started hanging out inside more, playing video games, and just started putting on 20, 30 pounds a year. So by the time I was a teenager, I was around 350. Um, and then that was kind of up through. I managed restaurants. I was a Starbucks manager for a long time, so I was always on my feet and then ran other restaurants. So I stayed around 350, 360. And then I took a desk job and went from 360 to about 450. And from there, just over the years, because when I was younger, I'd always lie to myself because I'd play full court basketball and pick up football games and I'd do all that stuff. So I was always the healthy big guy.
Yeah,
But when you get to 450 pounds and then 500 something pounds, you can no longer lie to yourself. I mean, you can, but you can't. There's no way you can believe it.
right.
You're at some point you're just saying, okay, now I'm just a fat guy,
Yeah,
and that's what it turned into.
that identity kind of shifts a little bit. When you're growing up
Yeah,
playing ball, it's kind of good to be the big
yeah,
offensive lineman type guy. And
yeah. That's my nickname is always Big Gene. It just
right,
always was there. That's where my weight loss name comes from. Is no more Big Gene because it became a part of my identity, and I was
yeah.
almost afraid to lose it. You know,
I mean, it makes
It-
sense if it started out that young, right? If you were
yeah, my whole
300
life.
pounds in junior high, that's
Yeah,
your whole life you've been a bigger guy.
yeah.
So you said that it was just you were kind of staying inside. Your eating habits
Oh
weren't
yeah.
the great. Did you kind of come from a bigger family? Was it just the family eating
Yeah,
habits?
it's family eating habits. A lot of people talk about obesity being hereditary, and that might be 2 or 3% of people in the world. But for us, we ate bad. I mean, my mom's idea of portion control was what she could fit on a plate.
Okay.
I mean, I
Yeah.
remember watching her, those big silver like things you do like crawfish boils and stuff in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember her cooking. She would buy the log of hamburger meat, and she would ground it all up and put it in there, and then she would literally boil like 4 packs of noodles for spaghetti and put it in there, and then dump like 4 cans of ragu in there and mix it up, and then we'd eat on it for like 2 days.
Yeah.
But that was, I mean, she just made everything she cooked. She would cook like 2 or 3 days worth, but then we would eat, like a whole plate of that spaghetti and like 3 or 4 pieces of bread or something. It was just you're eating enough food for a day in one sitting.
And then you weren't very active, and so things
No,
just kind of
or
progressed from
like
there.
breakfast, she would make 2 pans of biscuits, and then we'd have gravy. I mean, it was just not healthy. You
Yeah.
know.
I mean, but biscuits and gravy is delicious. At least
Oh
you
yeah, just all
got to
those carbs though. That's a lot
yeah.
of carbs.
Got to enjoy
When you're
it on the
younger, it's one thing, but the older you get, man, and you
yeah. I
just
guess
become diabetic, man, those carbs are really mess with you.
it's right. So, and then once you left the house, right? Because you said after high school and was actually you started gaining even more weight. So were the habits just
Yeah,
there and you just continue to eat better?
yeah. I just created those habits. It's funny because for the longest time I blamed my parents, but then once you're living on your own, and it's your responsibility at that point. You can blame them for the upbringing, and you can blame them for what got you to where you're at, but you're staying there on your own at that point. So that's kind of where I was at. I created those habits, and I just kept going down that spiral of well, and a lot of it too. Once you get bigger, and once you get older, and you get into the dating world, and you're and feels like life's leaving you behind, you get more depressed. So it's easier to eat more, and then the more you gain, the more depressed you get. So the more you eat, the more But I'm
Just
one of
that
those ones
cycle.
eating, and for me, eating is a happy thing. It's a sad thing. It's an upset thing. It's just a eat thing. So so it's just that was one of my that's like my drug of choice has always been food.
That makes sense. So you said you got all the way up to 550-ish pounds, give or take. You said you
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
your
Five
height.
twenty five is my biggest on the scale.
But
but
you
I know
said
I
you,
got bigger than that.
yeah, you got bigger. So at that point, did you have you tried to lose weight before you got to your biggest, or did you just not really care
Yeah.
about it?
I mean, off and on over the years. I mean, I'd lose 50, gain back 80, lose 75. I mean, I probably lost 2,000 pounds in my lifetime,
Right,
because it was you gain it, lose it, go on a health kick and then gain it, lose it. So for me, it was just around 29 is when I started No More Big Gene the first time.
yeah,
I was realized I was 30. I was like 480 pounds at the time. And
wow,
I think I got down to like 360, 370 and
okay,
was feeling really good. And then Biggest Loser reached out to me and I went through all their auditions and made it to the callbacks. And then they decided to do the first year they did the couples where they had like the two dads and the moms and that, whatever
yeah.
on there. And both of my parents had passed, or my mom and stepdad had passed away. So I really had nobody to partner with. So, but they had got me all the way down, or they told me to quit losing weight because they were like, "You're getting too small to be on the show." So I quit losing weight.
Kind of that dark side of those shows that you don't realize, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey,
So,
we want to be able to capture this, so don't.
so I canceled my habit pattern, and and then I had a breakup at the time, and just stuff happened to where I just went right back into my eating habits that I used to do before. And the next thing I know, I'm back up bigger than I've ever been.
Right. So at that point, you lost about 100 pounds. What did you do to lose that 100 pounds? What did that?
At that point, I created the No More Big Gene. I actually had a blog website back then and all that, and a bunch of people who donated money, and I just didn't work. So I mean, it was easy at that point because I'd get up and go to the gym for 2 or 3 hours, have lunch, rejuvenate through the day, and then go back and do a couple hours in the afternoon. I mean, I was working out nonstop,
That's crazy.
and
You're just doing 2 a days or
yeah,
whatever, just going nuts, huh?
yeah. And at that point, I just quit managing a Dunkin' Donuts. So I put all that weight on because I was working at Dunkin' Donuts with free donuts anytime I
Oh
wanted. And
man, yeah, that doesn't
so that
seem
was
like
kind of I
that's
was
in.
like, I got to quit this job because this ain't a good place for a big guy to be working.
Yeah, it's like an alcoholic at a whiskey shop. That ain't gonna.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, but it was just at that point, it was just it was unrealistic to do that as an adult now with kids.
Right.
But back then, I had the freedom to do it, and I had the financial backing, and I did really good. Like I said, up until they told me to quit losing weight, and then because once you create a pattern and a habit, and you start doing it,
Yeah.
it's easy to keep doing it.
Yep.
So
So they kind of tell you stop losing weight, and then you said you ended up regaining even more, which I think is common. People actually gain more than they
yeah,
lost. And is that when you got all the way up to the you're what you're suspecting about 550?
no. So in 2017, I was around 480,
Uh-huh.
or no. So 2017 is when I got up to 550, and
Yeah.
then my wife and I had our first kid that year, and so that was when I decided to try gastric bypass, and I did the gastric bypass,
Okay.
and I got down to 360, and then two
And
years
what did that look
later,
like? What did that change? Do you have to change diet a lot with the gastric bypass? What was the
yeah, I mean that's the
like?
one where where you can't eat a lot.
Yep.
They basically just take out part of your intestines and shrink your stomach down, and then you can't eat. But the problem is you can stretch it back out or you can drink around it. So
And is that what
I
you
was
did? Did you just drink
I
calories?
drank, man. I got so it all started. So that did really good, and I kept most of the weight off for 3 or 4 years. And then in 20, I'm not sure what year it was, but I fell and broke my leg, and was on bed rest for 4 months on bed rest, and then 6 months out of work. And they were throwing pain pills at me like crazy, and I couldn't be active during all that.
Right.
So I gained about 50 pounds during that. But then afterwards, I didn't want to be on the pain pills anymore. So I was like, oh, I'll just drink a few drinks a night to kind of let my body relax. Well, I was drinking sugar stuff. So either like vodka cranberries or wine, which is just pure sugar.
Right.
So I just started putting the weight back on. So that's when I got back up to 480 at that point.
So you regained almost 100 pounds after your
Yeah.
gastric
And
bypass. And how long
then
did that take you?
probably only about a year. I mean, it was pretty quick.
So to lose and regain that 100
No,
pounds.
no, the losing was over a couple years,
Oh, okay, and then one
but the
year to regain.
regaining was like a year of putting it all back on. And then so this last
How was that psychologically? What were you trying to do to navigate that? Was it stressful? Did you just kind of accept it? What was going on?
At that point, I wasn't really focused on it. I was just focused on the spiral, you know. But that's what a lot of people don't realize is, man, when big people are having issues like that, it it can take over your brain. You know, the endorphins or I mean, I don't know how it works, but the psychological side of it. I mean, you get caught up in the moment of it. You know, you're supposed to not do it.
Right.
You know, you're not supposed to eat the candy. You know, you're not supposed to do that. You know, and that was one of the things is I'm not a huge fan of the Biggest Loser at all. Um, but one of the things that one of the doctors talked about on there is when a heavy person or somebody that treats themselves all the time, they crave it more than anybody. But then
Mhm.
when they actually get it, they don't really enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's why the really healthy person that every now and then has a cheeseburger, they really enjoy that cheeseburger, but they don't really crave it. It's just a treat. But
Yeah.
like with bigger people or people that are struggling with that, they crave it really, really bad. And then
And is that
even
how
while
you
they're
found
still,
yourself? You were just craving.
oh yeah, I was just like, I would find reasons to go grocery shopping at 8 o'clock at night because I know the liquor store closed at 9. And I would get me a bottle, 4 or 5 nights a week, or I'd drink 4 or 5 nights a week. But I would just find excuses and I would just catch myself doing it. Or I would catch myself inside a liquor store getting something and not even realizing why I'm at the liquor store.
Just became subconscious. You were just there. Like
Yeah,
just
it just happens. So I mean, so that was the biggest thing so 2 years ago, what triggered all this for me to get back on track is we had our second son. He was year and a half years old, and I'm sitting at work one day and I get real dizzy. I feel like crap. I don't know what's going on, and all my coworkers are coming over and telling me it looks like something's wrong with me, and I'm like, well, I have no clue. I just feel weird, but I think I'll be fine. And then finally, they came back over and was like, dude, we got to get you to the hospital. And at that point, I couldn't even keep my eyes open. I mean, it just happened real fast. So they had to call 911. They came in, stretchered me out, put fluids in me. And the crazy thing is, the doctor still never figured out what it was. They think I was just dehydrated, but it was enough to trigger something in me. I was
right.
back to 480 pounds. I got two kids now, and I was 43 years old. And I was like, something's got to change. So I read the book Atomic Habits, um, and it just rocked my world. And because he just talks about habit stacking
Yep.
and just start where you're at. Because so many people I'm gonna go to the gym and they go work out for an hour, and then they can't walk for 2 days.
Yep.
Well, don't go. Start small. I tell
Yeah.
people go walk around your block twice, and then walk
And
around your block
what did
3 times.
exercise look like for you when you started out? I mean,
So for me, with all
high
my injuries,
400s, that's
I
a big
can't.
guy.
Yeah, and I still can't do a lot even now because of all my injuries. So at my gym, Planet Fitness, they've got the seated elliptical.
Yep.
So it's like a recumbent bike, elliptical combined, and I'll do an hour of that a day. Is what I've worked up to. So I'll lift. Um, so I do push one day, pull one day, legs one day, and then I do cardio 5 days a week. Is what
Okay.
I do.
And is
So
that's what you built up to? What did it look like when you started?
when I started, um, 5 or 10 minutes, you know,
Yeah.
lifting for me has never been hard. I love lifting, so I hit lifting pretty hard at the beginning. Not hard at the beginning, but I would do 4 or 5 sets. Three sets of 15. Um, because when you're bigger, I tell people do lower weights, high reps, because you'll get your cardio built in with your weights. Is
Kind of
what I tell
cheat. Yeah, they always
everybody.
joke about that, right? Anything over five
Yeah,
is cardio. So
yeah,
you were just kind of,
yeah,
okay, I'm going to up the volume, get a little
yeah,
bit more
yeah.
cardio in.
So I just do like 15 to 20 reps at started out at like 50 pounds, depending on
Yeah.
what it was, and so I just started doing smaller stuff, and then on the elliptical, I went from like 10 minutes to 20 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour. I did an hour and a half a few times just when I felt good, because it's not putting any pressure. Because if I do a treadmill or a regular elliptical, I can only do like 5 or 10 minutes, and then my legs start hurting too bad, so I can't really get my heart going. Another thing I like doing is getting into the pool, um, and because right now, like Planet Fitness, when I got it was $10 a month, and then LA Fitness was like $35 a month. So I went ahead and got both. So I'll go to LA and I'll get in the pool and I'll just run in place or like do laps and swim and just do pool workouts because it puts zero pressure on my knees. Because when you're bigger, anything, I tell people when you're 350, 400 pounds plus, any type of movement is going to do it. I mean, it got to where, I couldn't even play with my kids. And that was kind of the sign.
Right. So you have your second son, you kind of start going back to the gym. I think it's really wise what you did. You just found the lowest impact kind of things that
Yeah.
you could do without blowing up your joints and navigating. How quickly did the weight start coming back off?
I started losing about 5 pounds a week at the beginning.
Okay.
There's some weeks where it'd be 3 or 4 pounds or 2 pounds, and then back to five. I'd spice up the diet routine. Like I said, I'd do intermittent fasting for a couple weeks, and then I would go back to, just because I was doing keto most of the time. I made carnivore for a while. Carnivore, my doctor recommended that just because it's really good for your heart. That's what my doctor said.
Yes,
I don't know
let's
much
talk
about it.
about the nutrition. So you start out going back to keto. Did you cut out alcohol as well, or
Yeah, I haven't touched alcohol.
okay?
I've cut
So
it out completely.
that was
That
probably
was the biggest factor there on the weight loss, just cutting that back out. Because the
yeah.
bypass helps me, just because it does stop me from eating a lot.
Hmm.
So even what I have to do is break it up into small meals. So I do like I bought some protein shakes that are like 34 milligrams or grams of protein,
Yep.
and then I do amino acids. So I'll do two amino acids a day, and then I'll do two protein shakes a day. So I'm getting 100 grams of protein from that,
Yeah.
and then I mix in just like meats and veggies and stuff with it.
Trying to get that. And so you started out when you got back up to your biggest, that was the first thing you're like, okay, I got to cut out alcohol, and
Yeah.
that's when the how was cutting out alcohol? What was the process that like?
I just went cold turkey. Like I
Was
said,
it
that doctor's appointment scared me enough. Like I said, being in the back of an ambulance, debating on calling my wife and telling her I love her, and it's nice knowing her. you know,
that's some heavy
and
stuff.
I mean, it was deep, man, and it was enough. Like that was my rock bottom again. Like I said, the first child was the first time when I thought I hit rock bottom, and I actually did really good at it. But the injury just really jacked me up, and it messed with my head again. Because like I said, 90% of weight loss, anytime somebody's obese, there's some type of mental battle. You don't get obese
Right.
if you're normal. If you're normal, you know when to quit eating. If you're normal, you know how to balance life. You don't get addicted to stuff. You don't get issues like that. So that's the biggest thing is there's got to be something wrong with somebody mentally. They got to accept it and not lie to themselves, which is what I did for years. Like I said, oh, I'm an active big guy. It's just who I am. It's hereditary. My parents, I lied behind that for so many years.
How were you able to make that shift, and what were some of the things you identified that you
Um,
had to change?
One, I just identified at 43 with a 2-year-old, I'm not going to be able to watch him grow up. I mean, that was the biggest thing that made me make the shift. But then just knowing how miserable I feel. I'm diabetic, so drinking that stuff wasn't good for me. It makes your diabetes 10 times worse. I mean, since losing all this weight, I'm completely off all my medicine. I'm not on metformin. I'm not on blood pressure medicine. I'm not on any of that stuff, because of losing the weight. But at my biggest, I was taking all that medicine and then still drinking, which is a horrible mix.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was really messing with me. Um, so once I quit, and made that decision, it just got a lot easier to keep making all the other decisions. And then, like what he talks about in that book, is somebody just habit stacks.
Yep.
So it's like start small and then just build on that habit to where it becomes a part of your identity, not just something you're doing or a goal. Like I don't have a goal of the weight I want to be at. I just want to be healthy.
I really like that. How, and this is a big shift that you just brought up, right? Because just a couple minutes ago, you said you were identified as the big guy, right? Like you
Yeah,
big
my
G,
whole life.
your whole
Yeah.
life you've been that, and identity is a hard thing to shift. So how did you make that change and redefine self?
Uh, well, the biggest thing is talking with a friend about it. I realized that whether I'm 200 pounds or 500 pounds, I'm still going to be the same person. I'm still going to be the fun Big Gene attitude.
Yeah.
So that's where I got to know more Big Gene from is saying, hey, look, it's not my identity. My weight isn't my identity. My personality is my identity. So that was the biggest transition for me because, like I said, I lived as Big Gene ever since I was growing up. I mean, Big Wood, Big Gene, Roadblock. I mean, it was just always my football names, buddies' names, and it never offended me. I mean, I've always just accepted it. But that's the bad part is when you get to where it no longer offends you, especially for guys, then you're in a bad space. Nobody comes up and say, "What's up, Big Judy?" You don't do that to women, but for
Yeah.
guys, it's just normal.
Yeah.
And it's a normal thing, and most guys learn to live with it. A lot of guys might go home and be depressed afterwards, but for me, it didn't really bother me because I let it be a part of my identity and people love me. So I thought it was a cool thing when I had to learn that I'm still going to be the same person no matter what size I am, but my kids need it, and they deserve for me to do it right for me to be right for them.
Yeah. So you kind of found that deeper why and was like, hey, I can still have
Yeah.
everything. Just shift it.
Yep.
So you dropped the alcohol. What made you decide to go the low carb and then eventually kind of carnivore route? And how did that play out?
Um, well, one of my neighbors, I kept seeing her and her husband, and they were both heavy but never really overweight, but just bigger, and they both were like super skinny, like dropped all this weight. And I was talking to them about it because I was already at that point I was just doing keto and just trying to do high protein, low carb, because being diabetic, I was always trying to do low carbs anyway when I wasn't eating
Right.
bad. And but I started talking to her about it, and she was like, "Yeah, her doctor told her about carnivore, and it really helped them with all their joints and stuff. And I've got joint issues as well, so I started talking to my doctor about it. So I pretty much do carnivore except for the protein shakes because they don't really mix in with the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
But I do carnivore pretty strict, and I just do the protein shakes with it.
Okay. And so kind of going through a day eating, like you said, you have your protein shakes and that type of stuff. And then
Yeah,
outside of the supplements, it's mostly just
and
meat.
then I'll do mostly red meat and stuff.
And that
So
have you and you ended up losing how much? That was when you lost the full about 200 plus pounds,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. That's when I lost. I went from the 480 down to like two or to like 318 was the last stint.
The last bit. So kind of you kind of had like a wave coming down. You've had some regain, but
Yeah, yeah, because like I said, the five something was like 2017,
right
and I
before the
got down
surgery.
right before the surgery, and then I got down again, or I gotten back up to 480 this last time is
Yep.
when I started really getting back on it.
So as many people know when they lose a lot of weight, it's not linear. There's a lot of ups and
Yeah,
downs and
it's a lot
backs.
of it.
How did you handle those ups and downs and how have they gotten easier over time? Like how's that changed?
Um, well, in the past, I didn't handle it really well at all because that's why I would gain it all back and gain more weight back. This last time, like I said earlier this year, I had a pretty bad year. Transition with job stuff and different things happen, and I let myself get back off track. But I caught myself after only gaining 20 pounds,
Okay.
and so now it's just getting back on track and putting myself back in my routine again. So I went about 3 4 months there to where I just kind of let my habits fall. I let my routine fall, and kind of let depression take over from what was going on in my life. But in the past, I wouldn't catch it.
And that
You
was
know,
that was kind of the trick this time because in the past you would
yeah,
just let it go until you
I
hit
would
rock
just let it
bottom.
go. But this time, I didn't start drinking again. I just kind of had worked junk food back in, is what I did,
So
and
you
I
just
just
stopped
kind
the
of
carnivore basically, just
I stopped the carnivore, stopped working out, and just went into like a downward spiral a little bit with candy and junk food. Um, and I started catching, but I caught myself because it's funny how in the past, I don't know if it's just because I've been so healthy this time doing it, but like even just putting on like 20 something pounds, I felt miserable.
okay.
Like, I feel like now I feel like I did it 500 pounds at three something. So it's like, it makes me want to say, okay, get back on track and just start working towards the goal of getting, below 300 this year by the end of the year. And then next year, try to get to 250 or something like that.
That makes sense. So this time you caught yourself and you kind of talked about the depression spiral, right? Where,
Yeah.
something bad happens that makes you upset, that makes you turn back to food. How are
Yep.
you able to keep that from happening this time around?
Um, Well, one is I put myself out there. So with the No More Big Gene Instagram and all that stuff and putting the stuff out there, other people started asking me, hey man, you haven't posted in a while. Hey man, we noticed you're not doing this. Hey man.
Yeah,
And then, my wife and kids and in-laws started asking me questions. They saw me not doing what I was supposed to be doing. And that just kind of helped me start getting myself back into the routine and getting back in the gym, which is what I'm working on now is getting that routine back in the way I was doing it before. Because all this just started a few weeks ago,
that
getting back
makes
on
sense.
track.
So when you're getting back on track, this can be a good thing to talk about. I think a lot of people fall in and out of habits. It's,
Yeah,
rarely is it just you change and then that's how it is for the rest of your life.
yeah.
Have you approached getting back into it? And, 'cause you said when you first started, it was like, hey, I had to start 10 minutes of cardio.
Well,
Was
you
it
kind of want to
starting
do the
all the
same
way
thing
back
again.
over? or where?
No, you don't have to start all the way over, but you also don't want to. I'm not going to. I don't go back in and do. Try to do 8 different reps. 8 different workouts at 15 reps at the same weight I was doing. And I'm not going to try to do an hour and 20 minutes on the elliptical at the same time. It's like I might try 30 minutes and drop my weights down half of what I was doing before and see how it goes. 'Cause, I mean, you can miss 2 weeks of the gym and your weights will drop by 40, 50 pounds.
It's amazing how quick
Yeah.
that happens.
So you just work back in at what you think you can do and then just adjust as you go. A lot of people, they get set in their mind, or especially athletes that have gained weight, or people that get in their head one thing and then don't feel bad when you can't do it. Just do what you can do is
Yeah.
what I tell people. So I'll never forget, I took a body pump class one time at 24 Hour Fitness, and it was in South Lake, Texas, and there was a bunch of like Dallas Cowboys in there with their wives.
Yeah.
And so they go over and put all this weight because I don't know if you ever done like a body pump or one of those workout classes where
I haven't.
you'll focus on one muscle for like 2 or 3 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So, and most of the time you just use a little bar with like you're using like 10 pounds, 12 pounds, 15 pounds or something. And these two big old Dallas Cowboys were in there and they had like 50 pounds.
Yeah.
And then like halfway through, you hear them like cussing and just get up and leave because they had burnt it. It's like, because you just have to do what your body will let you do. You don't go in there and hurt yourself because then you're not going to keep it up.
Yep.
If you overdo it, same as like when you're trying to change your diet, don't just cold turkey everything and try to do strict keto on day one because you're going to get it's too much of a change for your body that you're going to get burned out or you're going to think it's impossible.
Yeah.
But if you just cut out a couple things and then start working it in, working in the good and working out the bad little by little over time, you're doing pretty strict keto and you don't even realize it. Or like intermittent fasting, just try fasting for 5 or 6 hours at a time instead of doing the full 8 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Or when you do intermittent fasting, do it overnight when you sleep, not during the middle of the day.
So when you let's talk a little about fasting. You said you've had some success with fasting. When did you
Yeah.
start to implement the intermittent fasting and what did that look like?
About halfway through, and I started when you start seeing plateaus. Because what I try to do is change things up when I start plateauing. So what I would do is, like, if I had 2 or 3 weeks in a row where I only lost like a pound or a
Yeah.
half a pound, or I didn't lose anything, I would do intermittent fasting. And how I do intermittent fasting is I eat for 8 and I don't eat for 16.
Okay.
So I started eating around lunchtime, and I'll eat till 8 p.m. So that I won't eat from 8 p.m. until noon the next day.
And then
So
that kind of helps you just rein in a little bit less
yeah,
calories.
because you only have a couple hours at night before you go to bed, so you're not eating. And then when you get up in the morning, I work out on the. You always, I tell people it's always good to work out fasted because then your body can burn the fat and burn what's in your body while you're doing it. And then I would start eating around noon. So I do lunch at work, and then I do a snack before I went home. Then I have dinner with the family, and I wouldn't eat. And once you get doing it and your body gets used to it, there's some days you'll quit eating around 6 o'clock and not eat an extra 2 hours. But
You
just the more your body goes, and the more you get used to it. I mean, there's some people that are crazy with it. They eat one meal a day. Now they'll do one big meal a day, but they'll just do one big carnivore meal a day or
yeah.
one big protein meal a day and then not eat the rest of the day. And then your body's really burning fat when you do that.
Yeah. You brought up your family, kind of eating with your family. How has losing the weight affected your family relationships?
I mean, it's really helped with my kids,
Yeah.
being able to play with them, being able to do more stuff with them, because before I'd walk them to the park and then just sit there and I didn't have the energy to push the swing with them. I didn't have the energy to do any of that stuff with them.
That makes
And so that was my biggest thing there. And that's my main motivation, like I said, because once I get below 300, I want to go ahead and have my knee replaced. And then I'll be able to do a lot more with the kids. Because when I fell, my femur went through my knee and broke my tibia.
Jeez.
And so that was part of the reason is when I was drinking a lot is I thought that leg was just messed up when really it was the knee. So I thought my leg wasn't healing and there was something wrong with the leg and I was going to deal with it for the rest of my life. When I went to the doctors, they were like, no, you just need a new knee.
And then
So
you have to be below 300 pounds to get cleared for
I
the,
don't have to be. It's just the smaller you are,
yeah,
the easier the surgery and the recovery is. So that's my goal. Like by the end of this year, I want to get below 300, do the knee replacement next year, and then just keep focusing on, small healthy habits.
just keep going.
So
So,
having kids, it doesn't help on the food side though, because they got all their snacks and their gummies and
yeah, how is navigating that? How do you
uh,
navigate kind of that balance of the food environment and that type of thing?
well, when I was really into the mix of it, I would just, not go in the pantry, or my wife, they would keep, we have upstairs and downstairs.
Yeah.
So they would keep the junk food and stuff upstairs. The stuff that because my weakness is like gummy bears and like double stuffed Oreos. I don't
That's
like chocolate, so I don't sit down and eat like, Hershey's chocolate or candy bars and Reese's peanut butter cups. So my biggest thing is the gummy stuff, or like the sour straws, stuff like that.
yeah.
So
Yeah, the gummies will get you. So
yeah.
it sounds like overall it's been really beneficial for like your
Yeah,
family
my
life,
family, yeah, it's great.
everything.
Energy levels, vacation levels of walking, stuff like that.
And it starts to kind of just make things get easier and easier. So you brought up kind of hitting plateaus with weight and like learning how to navigate those type of things. How do you balance needing, kind of idea of like, okay, I gotta try something new to like break this without just, maybe changing every time you hit a hiccup? Like how do you balance that out?
I mean, some of it could be just having a cheat day for a day, or having a cheat meal. It's just stuff that makes your body, because when you do the same thing over and over and over, your body gets used to it. Same as
Yeah.
like working out. If you're doing the same workout every single day, you're doing the same, thing, then your body's going to get used to it, and then you're no longer pushing your body, and you're no longer making yourself um, straining your body. So your body's like, okay, well, this is the new normal.
Yep.
That's also why sometimes people do plateaus. Their body might be happy at that weight, even though, because for me, 350 is kind of like my happy weight, even though it's not good for me.
Just a
My body
settling
just
point,
kind
your
of,
body kind of
it
hangs
just
out
kind
right
of
there.
settles and chills, and I got to work my butt off to get anything below that.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest thing now, is just trying to get back to that routine, and just tricking myself to where I'll do now. If intermittent fasting is working and you're not plateauing, just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And most of the time with intermittent fasting, if you're obese, it's going to work. I
Right.
mean, just because your
You're eating
body's
all
going
day
into
long and you
starvation mode.
stop eating half the
Yeah,
time. It
yeah, your
helps.
body it goes into starvation mode.
Yeah.
And so then it starts, or not start, ketosis is the real word for it. So it goes into ketosis, and it starts eating off the fat in your body.
Right.
So
So, as far as moving forward, how do you, because you just said basically you're down, 200 plus pounds and you still want to lose, it sounds like another 100 pounds.
yeah,
How do you just keep your mind in the grind, over what, five,
yeah.
6, maybe 10 years of weight loss? How do you keep that going?
Okay. Well, for me, like I said, I don't make any money off saying this, because I keep saying Atomic Habits, James Clear.
You
I
like that
mean,
book?
I love that book, man, because he just talks about, I mean, I'm older, so I remember a guy named Buster Douglas. He was an old boxer back in the day.
Yeah.
He would get up to like
Rob Tyson.
350. Yeah, he would get up to 350 pounds in between fights. And then he would set a goal, and he would make a fight, and then he would let himself go. Or look at marathon runners,
Yeah.
they'll bust ass for 3, 4 months, do the marathon, and then let themselves go.
Yep.
And it really showed me, because that's what obese people do, is they'll set a goal to drop like 25 pounds or 50 pounds, and they'll hit that goal, and they'll, okay, well, I'll go celebrate. And then that celebrate turns into a cycle, a downward cycle. And I've done that so many times in the past. I drop 40, 50 pounds, and then celebrate a certain milestone. So for me now, I don't have any goals. I don't have a set goal of where I want to be. I just want to be healthy. And I'm trying to create habits. He talks about in the book, he goes, make it a part of your identity.
Yeah.
Make it who you are. Just make it to where people know you as the workout guy. Or they know you as the guy that eats healthy.
Yeah.
Because you got to think, food's the one drug that people still throw in your face. If you got a buddy that's a cocaine addict, you don't go, well, hey man, take one snort with
Right.
me.
Round of thought.
Or when somebody says they're recovering alcoholic, you don't come to family functions and start putting alcohol in their hands.
Yeah.
And I can't count how many times with even my weight loss, people are still shoving food and candy. And even in my last job, it got really, because everybody knew me. So like on my birthdays, they do like a fruit and cheese tray,
Yeah.
like for my birthdays, and nut tray and stuff, because they knew I wasn't going to eat a cake. you know
That's great.
and so that's the biggest thing, is just learning to make it a part of who you are. So if you don't do it, you don't feel normal. So like the last couple months, I just haven't felt normal because of not being in my weight loss journey.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like myself, because when you get up in the morning and you make yourself work out, you feel better for the rest of the day.
You really do. You brought up social interactions, which I think is the dark horse of weight loss that so many people don't talk about, is how hard it can be to navigate socially. Have
Hmm.
you had any, like you brought up some negative experiences. How have you been able to navigate kind of the negative pushback or negative experiences
Um,
along the way?
for me, the biggest thing is I haven't had a lot of negative pushback, but I do. You have to plan for it. You know, if you're going to be doing something, you got to plan for the event. You know, like if I'm going to a family function and I know they're going to eat like crap, I take my own stuff.
And that's been
Look
how
like
you,
a dork. You look like a dork, but hey, I'd rather look like a dork and be healthy than continue down the pattern that my family and I created.
right.
Because it all it is patterns. So when you have a bad pattern or a bad habit or a bad atmosphere, you're going to continue in that habit. You have to change the atmosphere. You have to change the mindset. And so for me, like when I go to family functions or I do stuff with friends, I just, a lot of them now when they were planning stuff, well, where can you eat at? And they'll even ask me that because they know, I'll still go now if they're going somewhere I can't eat and I'll just sit there or, I'll find something on most menus because you can order, two cheeseburger patties with no
Yeah.
bread or nothing with it. Um, you can order a grilled chicken and veggies or something. I mean, there's always something where you can strip it back and make a
Yep.
meal. So that's my biggest thing is just knowing where I'm going, look at the menu before I get there. So I don't pull up a menu in the store and make an impulse buy and order cheese fries or, you know, fried cheese or something I don't need to be eating.
Right. And so you've had pretty positive interactions and not a whole lot of negative stuff from.
No, not at this age. No, when I was younger, it was all the time. It was all kinds of stuff when I was younger, name calling, different things like that. But as I got older, um, a lot of people get more mature and you don't deal with it in your 40s like you do in your 20s.
Yeah.
Younger kids are going to get it the most. High school, college, um, you know, uh, oh, you got a great personality. You have a lot of that stuff when you're growing up. You
Yeah.
see it all the time, and it goes both ways, men and women. It's a struggle that people are going to deal with because people are human. People have emotions. People have a lot of hurt too. So then they hurt other people.
Right.
And a lot of people hurt people just so they don't even know it hurts people. Like some people, like for me, I've got thick skin. I grew up with a military dad. He was a drill sergeant, so he pushed me at a young age to where stuff doesn't really get under my skin.
Right.
But I might not show the emotion, but I would still deal with it. You know what I'm saying? So I might not let it hurt me, but I would still eat because of it. I didn't realize that's what I was doing.
Right.
Like I wasn't sitting around crying and pouting because nobody liked me because I was overweight, but I would still eat because of it. I would feel depressed because of my weight, and then I would eat.
That
You'd
makes
feel
sense.
upset because something didn't happen or a girl didn't like you back or something, and you would eat. So it's like a pattern that happens subconsciously. A lot of people deal with it in different ways. A lot of people do get called names and get called a bunch of stuff, and they got to deal with all that on top of it. I mean, it's a very uh, tough tough spot to be in. Because once you get into that spot, it's hard to get out of emotionally because you just feel like there's no way out. When you look at a scale and you need to lose 250 pounds, you think, why start?
Right.
You know.
How did you learn to navigate life without that emotional crutch of food?
Um, to me, just turn it towards something positive. Take a bad habit away and put a good habit in. You know, like I don't go shopping at night anymore, so it doesn't give me a chance. I'm not going shopping when I'm hungry. I'm not going shopping when the liquor stores are open at night. Stuff like that. It doesn't give me a
Yeah.
chance to want to do it because there was so before the incident happened with the hospital visit, the 3 or 4 weeks leading up to that, I was already wanting to lose weight, and I'd go like a week or probably about the first 2 months because I'd go a week or two without drinking anything, and then I'd go get last minute grocery shopping at night for the next day, and I'd drive by the liquor store and get a little fifth or a bottle of something and come home and drink it and go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I would do that. I'd go a week or two, and then I would have a fall, and then I'd go 2 or 3 days of drinking bad, and then I'd go good, and I'd go 2 or 3 days of drinking bad, and then I'd do good. So it's creating habits where you don't put yourself in a spot to do it.
Yeah.
So it got to a point late at night, my eating was bad at night. So like 10, 11 o'clock at night, if I'm feeling like I want to go eat, my whole family's in bed. I'd drive up to the 24-hour, because the Planet Fitness is 24 hours. I'd go up there and hop on the elliptical for an hour, burn myself out, and come home and go to sleep. So
And
you'll see like on my
that was kind of how
Instagram,
you switched it out. So you just a set of turning
yeah,
food if you're having a hard day or you're doing something like that,
go
you
to the
turn to
gym or
exercise or
or something. Grab a book about eating healthy. Because one of the things I notice is a lot of big people, they'll gain knowledge to lose weight and they think they're doing something
Yeah.
when all they're doing is gaining knowledge. They're not using it.
Okay.
I've read every book on weight loss. I've studied up on all these different things. I took Cooper's Institute to be a personal trainer. I did all that stuff,
Yeah.
but I wasn't using it. But if you're doing something that you think is going to be good, you can trick yourself into think you're doing it.
Okay. I
And I
see what you're
know a
saying.
lot of
Yeah.
people do that in a lot of aspects, but a lot of big people do that, because you can talk to a lot of these people and they know what they're supposed to be doing. They just don't do it. So you got to find that why, what triggers you, what your purpose is, what's going to drive you to actually, because everybody says they want to lose weight and everybody might want to, but they don't want to, or they would do it.
Right.
I didn't want to be 500 pounds, but obviously I didn't want to do what it takes to lose the weight. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So a lot of people say they want to do it, but they don't want to put in the effort to do it. And that's where I was at for years.
What fine and it was I guess it was your son, right? The
Yeah, the second having two kids now, a wife, because I'm sitting here thinking, man, even though it was $700,000 life insurance, if something happened to me, that's not going to last long with two kids in today's society.
right.
She's a stay-at-home mom. She takes care of the kids, takes care of the house. So it's like she'd have to try to get an income, plus
Yeah.
put the kids in daycare, plus this, plus that.
Yeah, I mean
So it
10
just
years
opened up
that's
my eyes.
70,000 a
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gone in 10 years. It's probably gone in about 5 years. I mean,
Right.
with
But
today's
yeah,
society.
that's yeah. Yep.
I mean, so that just really opened my eyes, man. I was like, I can't leave her. I mean, I don't want my kids growing up in poverty because I couldn't put food down. It's
Yeah.
pretty much what it came to.
Mm.
That's my motivation is like, if I can't do it for them, I mean, why even be here in the first place? It's like I
Yeah,
got
no,
to do something.
I really agree
That's why
with
I've
that.
got a tattoo that says "Choose life, don't just exist." Because that's all I was doing, man. 500 something pounds, you're not living.
Just
You
existing.
can't. You're miserable. You don't have the energy to do anything. I mean, you can see him when you my before pictures. I mean, it was just not a good life. I got to a point where I was no longer myself.
Yeah.
So I say no more Big Gene, but even at my biggest, I wasn't Big Gene anymore. The personality style of what got me the nickname because I wasn't having fun.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to Ranger games. I wouldn't go to football games. I wouldn't go anywhere because I wouldn't fit in the seats. So then it's just miserable. And so that's like the biggest thing now is like I'm small enough now to go to like sporting events and sit in normal seats. I've got the energy to walk to the seats. So I
That's
mean,
good.
it's little stuff that when you start hitting those little goals, I tell people the biggest thing is they call it non-scale victories. I mean,
Yep.
you've got to have non-scale victories to motivate you. Like for me, when I first bought my truck, I was up all over the steering wheel, and now I can fit my whole entire hand between me and the steering wheel. And that's a
For
lot.
you, man.
Going. So it's just setting those little goals. I still got a long way to go, but it's just setting those little goals that helps you move along the way. But you're not setting a major goal.
Right.
You just want to. I just want to be healthy. Is my goal.
You just want to keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward.
You said when you got all the way up to 550, you were just existing. You had like nothing left.
No energy, nothing.
I think a lot of people when they hit rock bottom, they feel that they know they need to make a change, but they have nothing left. So when you were at that point, what were you able to draw on to finally start moving? Where did you find that energy that didn't exist?
Um, it still didn't exist. That's what I'm saying. You just got to make that mental decision and just push it a little bit at a time. That's why I tell people when you're at a point where it hurts, don't injure yourself, but do something that you can do. Um, like I've seen I think it's Diamond Dallas Page. He's an old wrestler, and he started getting guys doing yoga
Yeah,
and
the
doing different,
DDP yoga.
yeah,
Yeah.
DDP yoga, stuff like that. One of the guys, Butterbean. I don't know if you remember him, the boxer.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, he was on his deathbed.
Yeah, he's beat up.
You
I've
know,
seen those. Yep.
beat up, man. And it's just starting small. Like I said, if it's for some people, it's just getting workout bands and just sitting inside your house and doing some stuff with your workout bands, and then do that, 3 or 4 times a day for 4 or 5 minutes.
Yep.
And then if it's just like I said, walking around your block, you can't. Like I said, if you try to jumpstart too well, at 500 pounds, you can't do too much. But you don't want to burn yourself out or hurt yourself to where then you don't want to go back. And
Yeah.
then find a gym where you feel comfortable. That's what I love about Planet Fitness. There's not a bunch of, that's their whole commercial.
Yeah.
There's not a bunch of jocks in there laughing at you or making fun of you.
Yep.
I know Fitness Connection for Women has a women's only area if you feel too vulnerable. So it's just find somewhere where you feel comfortable to be yourself, whether it's at your house in your garage, but it's just something small is what I did. Like I said, I just started walking around my block at first, with my family. We do a block or two around the neighborhood, and then it got to where I was able to do a few blocks, and then I went to the gym and started doing a little bit more at the gym because then I could find something to take the pressure off my legs because I did notice that I'd hit my limit, of maybe a half a mile is more all I could do on my legs.
Right. Because I mean, 550 is a lot for
Yeah.
half a mile. Most people couldn't carry 550 pounds a half
So
a mile.
yeah. So I recommend most people at that size going to a pool. That's going to be
Yeah.
the best thing for
That's
them.
what you found the pool worked out really well for.
Yeah. Because I mean, you can get against the wall and just kick your legs. You can run in place if it's about chest high. You
Yep.
can just kind of run in place and it's not putting any pressure on your joints. The friction of the water helps.
It's
Helps you
got your
break a
heart rate
sweat.
moving.
Yeah.
That's great, man. I think it sounds like we kind of talked through a lot of the questions I had. Do you have anything else you
Yeah.
want to add before we wrap up, or?
Yeah. I mean, my biggest thing is to tell people to start where you're at with what you got and do as much as you can. That's my biggest thing. That's what I tell people. And if you've got younger kids that are obese, just talk to them. Don't shame them because that was my biggest thing growing up. Is people always shamed me as a kid,
Yeah,
and they would try to, think it would help when it doesn't. It's just going to make it worse. So the biggest thing is just love on them and try to help do it with them. Try to help them find habits, help them do stuff, find something active and motivating that they enjoy doing.
yeah,
Stuff like that. That's my biggest thing that I want people to get out of what I do is just start with small habits and go toward. Make yourself 1% better every day.
I like that.
Yeah.
I don't think I can end on anything better than that. Gene, thank you so much. Your story's been
Yeah.
very
Thanks for having me.
inspiring, and I know our listeners are going to like it. We'll just wrap it up there.
All right, brother. Have a blessed day.